Hi there, welcome to Church Talk, episode 1. We'll probably come up with a better name in about a week or so.
Mhm.
I'm Ethan Holland, for those of you that didn't know. Here we've got Jose Ortiz.
Hello.
Jose, say a little greeting, little blessing.
Yes, sir. And may God bless you wherever you are, and that the Holy Spirit always be with you.
Amen.
Yeah.
Wow, that's deep. That's deep. I'm not going to lie. So, to those listening, wondering what you're watching, this is the youth podcast, if you will. It's me and Jose talking about stuff that y'all ask us in class and we just can't cover because of time limits. And so this is not going to be a preaching. It's just a recorded conversation just between two humans. Today, what are we talking about?
Dating advice.
Dating advice, one of the most touchy subjects, guys.
Just a few little points that we have on the computer, just to kind of guide us so we're not just jumping left and right.
We're not going to talk over each other, and we're not going to ramble.
Okay.
I say that. I've said that. I'm sure it'll get shoved in my face later that I said that, but
Yeah, me too.
just had to get that out there. So you have written down time.
Mhm.
Why don't you give us a little explanation on that?
Well, time, I say it's kind of when it kind of goes with the second point, which is age, and it's when you should start dating, or not should, because it's different for everybody. You know what I'm saying? Some people will start dating, some kids.
So how? I guess I could ask you, how do you know that you should be dating? That's kind of a simple question, but at the same time, it's a little deep. How do you know you wake up in the morning, you're like, okay, it's time. I've waited long enough. I've got about one more good year. I need to make it happen.
Oh well,
Today's the day I sign up for Christian Mingle.
I can't say like 17 years old, you're ready. No, but
And it is different for everybody. Like, my grandparents got married 18, 20.
there
There
you
are people
go.
that get married at like 40.
Right, and then
I personally, my limit's 30. People ask me if I would ever date online. If I'm 30 and I'm still single, at that point, I would date online.
right, I think anybody would.
But anyway, back to the church talk
Mhm.
answer. What are some of your things that you want someone that is probably in high school to think?
See, that's where it gets complicated, because us being Christians, churchgoers, and people who follow Christ, we're gonna have a different point of view of it. We're gonna see that.
So in that case, why don't you give the secular point of view?
Right, right.
So let's do the secular point of view, and then we'll do the religious point of view,
Mhm.
and then we'll kind of connect them.
Okay. Well, any young man or woman by age in junior high, man, I knew kids that were dating in elementary school, kissing and whatnot. Um, so in the world, it doesn't really matter if the only thing that stops a kid from being with a girl or saying, "Oh, that's my girlfriend," is like their parents being on them, or them just being crazy enough to like, "Oh, you want to be my girlfriend?" Because it's so easy
Sure.
for a kid to
So it's obviously a little more lax than the
right,
religious
right,
version.
because the
Sure.
parent is not there anymore.
Sure.
And this kid is now
So
growing.
and then from the religious point of view, I guess you could say that obviously you date to get married.
Mhm.
I tend to argue that the scientific definition of dating is also to get married, really to have children, to mate.
Mhm.
But I mean, you could really say that that'd be getting married. But so you have these two different perspectives. Let me ask you something. At what age did you consider yourself a full-blown Christian? Like, you know what? I'm going to accept Jesus into my heart,
Mhm.
and I'm going to change the walk of my life. How old are you now, and how old were you when you said that?
I just turned 23.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I started I I started taking it more serious, I say, when I was 17. 17, 18, I really was like, okay.
So about 15, 16, when you were kind of freshman, sophomore, you were just kind of whatever.
Yeah, and it wasn't like whatever, because
Like a churchgoer, just not.
right.
I'm trying to
right.
remember from like when we first met.
Right. I wasn't like dating, having girlfriends back to back to back either, but I feel like I really buckled down 17, 18.
Okay. So we have Jose's perspective of 17, 18. becoming, considering theology and, I need a date to get married and other religious stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was born into church. I'm fifth generation practicing Christian, trying to do missions. However, my mom's side, that's not the case. So I guess you could say probably early childhood, probably about 8, 9. I was really I knew I was Christian. I probably didn't know why. And then I probably got to about 11, and I was like, you know what? This is it. And I knew Bible stories. My mom in the car would play songs like Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and then she'd make me repeat them. And if I didn't know them all, she'd give me a lecture about my faith and et cetera. So I guess where I'm getting at with this is we were both in the same realm at different times, obviously, because I'm 19, you're 23. But when we were both 15, I think we were approaching it in what we're about to compare.
Mm-hmm.
So you were approaching it from the non-religious aspect, and I was approaching it as, like, I broke up with my first girlfriend because I woke up one day and I was like, you know what, we couldn't be married, this is over. And I broke up with her, like, the next day.
That's good.
And so that's where we compare the two. So what would you tell the youth looking at this comparison? To anybody, if you're a grown adult listening to this, I mean, hey, good. But when you hear Jose and I talking about this, you have to remember that there's a backstory. I'm coming from my whole childhood being Christian. Jose is not.
Mm-hmm.
So when we have these conversations, we have in present day we have the same perspective, but in the past we didn't. So what would you? I'm trying to decide where I'm going with this, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
What do you take from all that? What do you take from all that? Like if you were listening, what would you take from that? What do you want them to take from that?
Well, going back to what you said of 15 years old,
Sure.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Both of us at 15. Okay.
Both of us at 15. I talked to girls and I would ask them out, and I'd want to go to the movies and all the secular things that really any Christian kid has seen and has heard and goes through every day during school. You know what I'm saying? That's the norm. That's the norm. If you didn't have a girlfriend, well, I don't know. I can't talk for everybody, but that's what you saw. You saw kids holding hands. You saw kids kissing. You heard stories of kids going to the movies, going to the mall, and you as like a young boy, you're not a man. As a
your frontal cortex doesn't even fully develop until 21, which we'll touch in a second.
Well, there you go.
But you were saying.
See, like, you see a girl that's pretty, you talk to her, and you ask her out. That's like the basic. You ask her out because that's like the norm, Everybody has a girlfriend. That's normal.
Sure. So, okay. So Jose's given you that, he likes girls. If he liked them, he'd ask them out, go to the movies, etc. when he was 15. When I was 15, to be honest, I've probably only had 2 real relationships. Really 1, but the other one, I still learned a lot, so I guess it could be 2. When I was 15, it's kind of hard to remember, but what I do remember was if I looked at a girl and I was like, you know what, we vibe, we're chill, we talk. I sound like a boomer trying to be a millennial, but this is actually how I talk if you know me outside of church. I'm like, okay, you know what, this could be something. And then the instant that they drop like an F-bomb or they start cussing, or I notice like a deep theological difference, like they're a different denomination, different religion, immediately feelings turned off. I don't know if that was the case for you on stuff that you may have believed in outside of religion, but for me, the second, even to this day, the second, it's like I can look at them and no feelings whatsoever. So we have those 2 different perspectives from 15. So you have written here attachment.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at that, what do you mean by attachment? Because looking at me immediately disconnecting, I guess you could say, from someone that I knew for a fact. Let me just say for the record, I don't intend to ever get married until after I graduate college. Mm-hmm. So when I say, you date to get married, you can have a girlfriend. But in an ideal world, if, the worlds were to crash, I want to be ready to get married tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can't get married at this instant, I'm not dating. We can talk, but we're not you're not my girlfriend unless I can be married to you. A lot of married people say that it's their girlfriend or their boyfriend. So when you see that, and then yours, where it's like, oh, like we're gonna go, we're gonna go to the date and stuff and all that, whatever. What do you mean by attachment?
I think it's real easy for going back to that kid that's not as Christ-centered as you were taught to be, as you were raised to be, which is really good. It's a really good. It shows how you were, disciplined, or you were raised, and how deep your roots run with your beliefs. You know what I mean? Not just with the church, but in yourself.
Like as a person.
Yeah, as a knowing that no.
Well, especially when you're 15, you're developing your personality.
Right.
You're deciding who you're going to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, in that scenario I gave, where it's the norm and whatever, you're not ready to take on true responsibility, with girlfriends and, growing up, and you feel like you are. You're not ready, but you're still living with your parents. You're like a kid, you know what I'm saying?
Well, let's talk about what you have to be ready. Let's put, this is again where we can compare what you have to be ready. We can come back to the attachment thing, but just to understand it more.
Mm-hmm.
For me to be ready, before I even ask a girl to be my girlfriend, I talk to their dad. If their dad's not around, I will talk to their mom.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a rule that my parents have given me, and then they got more lax on it, and I just did it. One time my dad told me, in one of my previous relationships, my dad told me, he's like, but have you talked to her dad yet? I was like, I already did. He was trying to give me he was trying to win me over on doing that. And I'm like, Dad, I've already done it. He was like, really? And I was like, yeah, think about it if it was your daughter. I sat down her dad and I was like, hey, I'd like for us to be in a relationship. I am approaching this as a Christian. I am interested in dating to get married. I'm not interested in getting married tomorrow. This could end by the end of the sentence. But for whatever it's going to be, I'd like your approval on it. And he was blown away. And I was like, well, it's a matter of respect. So for me to be ready, I have to have family approval.
Mm-hmm.
My mom has to like her.
Mm-hmm.
My sister has to like her.
Mm-hmm.
My sister, makes jokes and stuff, but my sister does have to like her. And so does my mom. And so does my dad. So you have those two to be ready. I have to see myself getting married. And when I say married, I mean in fights.
Mm-hmm.
How do we resolve things? How do we resolve conflict? When we have our kids and they are asking us questions about theology, what's the answer? That's what I'm thinking about with being ready. Am I in a good financial place? Even if, I only make $10 a week, what do I do with those $10? Do I go out and buy disposable things? Or do I pay for what I can pay for with necessities and save?
Mm-hmm.
Or am I out here using those $10 a week to treat myself to an $8 burger every Friday? What am I doing? So when I think of being ready, what about grades? Even if your grades are bad, why are they bad? Why are they bad? Are you because there are geniuses that have terrible grades. And it tends to be stuff for attention disorder and all that. So when I'm thinking about being ready, it is to get married. So could we build a foundation with what we have right now? With what I'm bringing to the table, are you ambitious? Do you work? Etc. What do you care for in life? What's your
hitting on me?
why do you wake up in the morning? Yes. So I'm asking you right now. I'd like for us to go get ice cream after this. Obviously, I'm straight, folks. Don't worry. But you are too.
Yes, sir.
It's good to hear. Anyway, but yeah, I'm thinking about all this, and I'm like, okay, are we ready to build a foundation? Even if you're trying to get from a patch of grass to a small dirt pile,
Mm-hmm.
it's still a foundation that's going to grow into something, and from that, it will expand.
Yep.
So with what you're saying about attachment,
Being ready.
what is being ready to you who's listening or to you?
To me?
For me, that's what being ready is. What about to you or the person listening?
No, that's solid. Solid. Man, sometimes kids, I'm not going to say our age, because as you've explained and as I agree with you.
He's 23 and I'm 19.
Right.
I don't know if his girlfriend's listening, but he's interested in like moving on, and I don't have a girlfriend, so we're kind of approaching this at different aspects.
That encompasses really all it is, all ready should be, right? Financial, your relationship, your family, them becoming part of your family. I agree on all that. Going back to that other kid, I know I keep going back to the kid because we're comparing and contrasting. All that you just said is scrapped.
You do think it's all scrapped?
Yes, it's all.
Well, because of course there's gonna be worldly people that are approaching it, but it's not the same priority. I think is what you're getting at. It's not the same priority. I'm doing it because it's a value. It's a theological belief.
Yeah.
So what were you gonna say?
Most people won't talk to their dad, to the girl's dad, till much later, you know?
To like engagement.
Right. It doesn't even bother them. It doesn't move them.
And their dad doesn't, well, I was going to say their dad doesn't care.
Most of the
but
time.
Like
Most of the time.
this particular story that I'm talking about, her dad like cared.
Mhm.
Like was like shocked.
Yeah. And that's, like you said, that's
Friended me on
respectful.
Facebook right after. Anyway.
Wow. That's cool. Yeah, that's great.
I fully think that the other thing to be ready, we talked about your parents. How do you fall with her family? Can I talk to her siblings? Can I talk to her parents?
Right.
What is our relationship?
Mm-hmm.
Can I spend an afternoon with her dad and talk about whatever? I don't know if you know Ted Schkeeve from North Carolina. We went to Dominican with him and Nicaragua.
Mm-hmm.
Jose and I have like 10 years of like stuff. So anyway, Ted, if you're listening, I doubt you are, but if you are, your advice is about to be applied. Remember when he said that with his father-in-law, he personally hates golf, but he would make himself watch it, and he would watch YouTube videos on how golf works, what a driver is, what a putter is, all that, and then he would go golfing with her dad specifically to develop a relationship, even though he hated it.
Mm-hmm.
It's compromise. So
he's giving in. He's not giving in. He's giving to the relationship. He's building it because it matters to him. So
Exactly.
he's investing himself.
Exactly.
Not only into the girl that he's marrying, but past that, into what she cares about, people that she cares about. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah.
So what you were saying about all that's out the window, all the stuff about being ready, the stuff that we've covered in like the last 5 minutes or so, all that's out the window completely.
I think so.
What's in the window? Did you have a girlfriend when you were 15?
I think so.
And how did you approach it, if you can remember?
Okay.
Like what were your priorities?
Just
to have a conversation and listen to some music, or what was it?
My priorities were to go to the movies, have some time with her, talk to her. She was just a cool person. That's how I saw it. They're a cool person, and I'd like for her to be my girlfriend. That's how I thought about it. But the respect thing about asking for permission and stuff, I don't know if it was how she was raised as well, or it does matter from both sides. But at school, you just ask if she wanted to be your girlfriend, and she'd say yes.
How do you feel about asking her out over text? I think that is a lack of class.
You dodge a lot of like.
I think you dodge. This is going to be extremely cringy, but I think you dodge the romance, if that makes sense. When you're talking to a girl and like you're asking her out and like you're replaying it in your head later, because let's face it, you're going to, and she's replaying it in her head, whether she admits it or not. Is it like, dang, I remember this one time that blue message came in and it said, hey, what are you trying to... No. You're thinking about the connection that you made.
Mm-hmm.
And, to get even deeper, it's the foundation of what your relationship's going to be like. If you text to ask her out, you're probably going to text to break up.
Okay, Ethan, you're getting real deep.
We don't have to get into that right now,
but people do text to date, because they're scared of doing it in person. It's really what it
Well,
boils
right,
down
but
to.
you can't be scared if you're trying to be in a relationship.
Right, but the kid.
What about when you're married and the power goes out?
Okay, but when you're a young boy, you don't care. You don't care. You're just like,
I'm thinking about, you know what? When it's 3 a.m. and the power goes out and I gotta go find the fuse box and I gotta get it back on, am I scared? I'm kind of being a little over dramatic, but
Fuse boxes.
Anyway,
A thunderstorm.
yeah, a thunderstorm happens and she's like, hey, assuming you're married, she's like, hey,
Right.
she's like, hey, can you get the power back on? What am I gonna? I don't know. they might have.
You're scared of the dark.
I don't want to electrocute myself. Like
You don't know what you're doing with the fuse box.
That's what I'm
I
saying.
think
You
that
can kill
goes-
yourself on the fuse
I
box.
think that goes with lack of knowledge or skill.
Well, that's where it's
Crafts.
you're talking about lack of knowledge. Whenever you're dating, we're talking about attachment. Whenever you're dating, I know in my case, it takes me a lot to fully commit because I'm thinking about all of the potential of error.
Mm-hmm.
My mom told me one time, I think like last year or whenever, she was like, Ethan, you don't need to be focused on that. She's like, you're going to learn a lesson from that relationship and you're going to learn how to be in a relationship. And then me being an idiot, I was like, oh, so I should just use her to learn? I was like, I should just date her and then once I've learned enough points, break up with her. And my mom like slapped me. Like she didn't slap me across the face, but she was like, would you pull your head out, please? And then she like slapped my. If any of y'all know my mom, you could probably imagine her saying that. And then I got in. It's kind of. I mean, it's it's an awkward subject, but I got in a relationship. It was great. And then one thing led to another. It didn't work out. Felt an insecurity. Prayed about it. Kept growing. I was like, you know what? This isn't of the Lord. So I broke up with her. Fixed. I immediately just felt at peace.
Mm-hmm.
And so I told my mom about that. But I was like, you know what? I know. When I talk to a girl, I am like approaching it completely differently. You know what I mean by that?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like, it's not like sexism, we're all equal. I mean, we are. But with like a guy, it's like, hey bro, what are you doing today? Like it's a little different. And, I learned like, okay, whenever you're picking her up, you should probably get out, open the door for her.
Mm-hmm.
That stuff, I was just like, that's cheesy, that's cringe.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that it's a matter of respect. Learning stuff like that. So when you're talking about like attachment, like you can use things to get to other levels. So, maybe one day I thought we could get married and then we were learning and I was like, you know what, this isn't going to work out, but I'm going to take what I learned from this relationship and the future relationship, have a blissful foundation.
Mm-hmm.
So sorry to go on that tangent, but
No, but with that, you're mature enough to see that you can scrap, and it's not like you're belittling
I
the
was just
person
I
or
did
the
not
relationship.
understand it. I was like, so I'm just gonna use her, and then once I feel like I've learned enough, I'm just gonna like just break up with her, and then study my notes for the next conquest.
Yeah.
Like I just did not understand it until it was over. I told my mom, I was like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, all you're doing is like reading the field, looking at it, and with you knowing what you want, how you want it, building that base, building something together, and having all that the foundation, you yourself in Christ, you know what you want, and all things are going to work out in your favor because of the rock that you're standing
And
on.
I'll tell you right now, prayer is important.
Yeah.
Prayer, I'm noticing we don't have as a bullet point. So if you want to add it to the order of this podcast that you'd want to talk about prayer,
Mhm.
unless you just want to talk about it right now.
Back-
Because we're
Let me
let's finish
attachment.
attachment. Let's finish
Yeah,
attachment. Let me add prayer to the list. But go ahead.
In attachment, I put that point down because, and trust me, I'm speaking from where I've come from, okay? I can't talk from anyone else's point. In those relationships, throughout junior high, throughout high school, both me and, let's say, this other person that I was dating would invest too much, Think about your relationship that you
mean like move it too fast?
No. You would either trust this person too much, you would either depend on this person too much, because.
So are you talking like little details or big stuff? Like I'm gonna let you drive the car today, or are you talking like here's my password to my bank account,
No.
or like what aspect are you talking about?
To to where your happiness,
Is artificial?
no, was based on this person. Okay, and that's what I've said sometimes in the youth class.
Like, I'm sorry, like your happiness is like shaped because of, or what do you mean based off of this person?
It's, if you two aren't good, then the day just looks bad. The day is gloomy. You know,
So like the relationship dominates you.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, because you're using
We got
this
it, folks.
You're using this person as your foundation. You know, you're letting
Like your emotional output.
right.
Like
but it
if
also,
I'm stressed out,
but
they're
also
gonna be stressed out.
what you're trying to fill yourself with. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes. And you're saying that is bad.
Yes, because if your happiness, going back to a Christian mindset, if your happiness is based off of somebody else, that person is not perfect, and that person will let you down. And
So
that
your foundation should be based off of God, not
right,
the other person.
right? But because said person or me in that situation isn't really giving God that place in my heart, I'm looking for it in someone else. When that person lets me down, it hurts me more. You know, it hurts me because I've given that person too much of myself. I've given that person too much of my,
Like they have a piece of you.
yeah. And so that unrest in the relationship.
So that unrest creates y'all breaking up, and then you now have an emptiness inside of you
problems.
because you had attached to them so much of yourself
Yeah.
that now you're left with
you
nothing.
depend too much on them.
Okay, I get it.
Mhm.
Okay.
And so that's the problem with kids that go doing that in relationships, because you feel like you lose part of yourself when you break up with this person or when you fight with this person, when in reality you
should be gaining even if you're breaking up.
you should be growing, you should be learning like you did. But because their rock isn't there, since they weren't raised the same way, since they don't see things the way that you did or do at this time, you know, about dating, then to them their world is just rock. Like,
Well, this is where we go back
messed
to
up.
the being ready. If you are going into it not understanding what you have just talked about with
Mhm.
attachment and giving a piece of yourself to them, and you go into it not understanding that, then you're not ready. Because it's going to happen. It's something that you're going to fight against.
right.
Because you should give them a piece of yourself. You should depend on them, but they shouldn't be you. It shouldn't be like, you know, like I have kidney stones and she says ow every time they flame up. You know what I
Right.
mean by that? It shouldn't be like, you know, like I get punched in the face and they say ow for me.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't be like that, but you should still give them a piece of yourself. So if you're not ready to understand all of this that's happening, and you know, we can argue that this is from a Christian perspective, but even from a secular perspective, I've had friends that tell me like, dude, I mean, this is kind of branching off just a little bit, but it'll connect. Obviously this is a purity ring, so whichever camera we're on, but the having sex with someone should be your wife, obviously.
Mhm.
Not engaged, but after you have been married. And I have friends that are not Christian that I would tell, like one of my best friends, ever since I met him when I was like 15, he's like, "What's that ring, bro? Why you always wear it?" I'm like, "It's a purity ring." He's like, "You mean like what?" I'm like, he's like, "You waiting to have a girlfriend?" I'm like, "No, I'm waiting to get married." And he was like, "Oh heck no." I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "I couldn't." And I'm like, "Well, I couldn't either, but I'm doing it for religion. It's not me doing it. My flesh, of course, can't do that, and that's why you put your faith in God."
Right.
Of course, my flesh. Anyway, but and then that friend who's not understanding that, he then goes. I'm not gonna say his name because I don't want to like expose, because who knows where this podcast gets put. But he then goes and loses his virginity, and then a few months go by, and I find out about it, and you know we just kind of laugh it off, whatever, because he's not Christian. It's like when you lecture. It's like when you evangelize and you use hell as a tactic. If they don't believe in hell, you're not gonna get anywhere.
Yeah.
So, you know, I wasn't, you know, I'm like, you know what? The Lord's going to give me a time where I talk to him about Christianity. Right now is not it.
Mhm.
He himself told me, he's like, "Dude, wait till marriage. It's not worth it." And I was like, "What do you mean it's not worth it?" He's like, "Dude, I regret it so much." And I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "'Cause it was great, but once it was over, like it was over." He's like, "There was no point." He's like, "I would have so much preferred to wait because now it's like I'm ruined." And I was like, really?
Your
and
mom
he
has talked about
and
that
he is
before.
not Christian. And he's not like shut up to the idea. He's like, bro, I'm trying to focus on school, whatever. So, it's just everybody has their time that they need to hear about God, and God works through someone to get them to hear it.
Yeah.
And so I always stay close to him, and I'm always praying about God, show me when I need to tell you. So don't think that I'm just letting him, coast his life. But he's even told me now, he's like, you know what, bro, I think I'm going to wait till I'm engaged. I'm like, you know what, that's something. For somebody that's not Christian, I'll take it. And so that's where we go back to attachment. Even people that aren't religious will tell you, dude, do not give them that part of yourself. It's not worth it.
Because it dives down into a spiritual sense.
Well, they say that biological, when you have sex with someone, it does present emotional attachment. That's like on a psychology, sociology class. They'll tell you you're getting emotionally attached to them. And a lot of the times they're atheists. These psychology professors and stuff, they'll tell you. So why are you arguing it even if you're not Christian? But what was my mom saying?
That a part of you literally is taken from you when you have a sexual interaction with somebody, to where you feel like you're missing something of you.
To those of you that don't know, my parents are kind of unique because my dad, all of the generations before him, never been a divorce. My mom, every single generation before her has divorced. And not to get super uber personal about our pastors, but my mom's mom did kill herself when my mom was 7. My mom went out to the living room and there she was, overdosed. My mom did not become a full-blown, like, going to church, receive Jesus into her heart until she had graduated college. She was about 23, 22. So she had relationships before then. She wasn't like, embracing the world, but she wasn't Christian. And she really didn't believe in God. So when he talks about my mom is approaching it from that perspective, the same one that Jose is approaching it from, relatively, where she wasn't Christian. She went through college. She got a college education as someone who was not saved. And then she became Christian, and then she got married, and now she's a pastor. So continue. Basically, that you were saying that she said that, like, it gives a part of you to them.
Right. So it's something that in the world nobody really cares about because of how, like, normalized it is. You know what I'm saying?
Sure, through like Hollywood and media.
Yeah, through your friends.
Because people really don't understand what that does to you. Hollywood, turning on the TV. My mom's been getting on to me because I listen to a lot of Joe Rogan podcast. To those of you listening, most of you probably know, we're not going to get into politics. You probably know how I stand. I disagree with Joe Rogan on about 90% of things, but I find him very interesting. I was listening to him in the kitchen the other day, and right when my mom walks in, F-bomb, just this, beep, 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 beep. And then all of his guests start cussing, and my mom was like, Ethan, it's like, don't be walking around our house playing curse words. I was like, what are you talking about? And then I got like a 30-minute conversation about what that does to the house, because those of you that don't know, the church is not necessarily the church. You are the church. You take the church to your home. The church is not exclusively the church. The church is everywhere. So it's the same concept almost as if I was walking around cursing in the church. I'm doing that at our house where our war rooms are, our prayer rooms, all of that, and I'm walking around playing it, and I hadn't thought about it. So anyway, people don't really tend to get onto that. But have you everything you've wanted to say about attachment, or is there anything else you want to touch?
Just be careful with that. If we are giving advice, or we're not experts by any means, but just by our points of views or where we come from, just be careful not to depend on the person. Make sure Christ is your center. Make sure Christ is where your happiness, where your
maybe pray together,
where your fullness should be. You should be full in Christ before ever needing anybody else. Do you know what I'm saying? You shouldn't need that void to be filled, because it should already be filled. Exactly. You should be whole, because by ourselves we're not going to be whole, which is why people look for it in people, in drugs, in other things that the world offers.
Other outlets.
Right. And so a person could be your outlet. So just make sure it's Christ before you go into a relationship. Because like you said, you will have to give and take like Ted did, you know?
Sure.
So, and maybe it's not with her dad. Maybe it's in the relationship, fixing problems, you know, in arguments, whatever it is that you have to give of yourself.
So I've moved the prayer to, I think we're going to talk about that at the end, relatively the end. So we've covered attachment. You have written down boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by boundaries, assuming we haven't already touched on them? Maybe here in a bit we'll get Emmy or Denise in on the podcast. If not, it doesn't happen.
Yeah. Well, boundaries to a Christian are no sex till marriage.
Sure.
And that's any form of sex that you could, that is out there. That's what, you know, the Bible calls for. That's what you should be doing, right? But in the outside world, and I'm talking to, like, if I was talking to one of my youths in there, that's not the norm with Hollywood, with what memes, with Instagram, with all you see everywhere, you know, all you see in your daily living in school and out and about. That's not the case. Nobody has boundaries. There's when you have a girlfriend, you can do whatever with her, you know? Like,
a lot of people, I don't want to get disgusting, but a lot of people have boundaries, like we're not going to have sex, but there's bases, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, I have friends that are not Christian that at least are like, you know what, you know,
We're not crossing this line.
we're not crossing X base.
Right.
Because at that point,
But
we have gone too far.
Okay, but they're at that point that they're drawing for themselves. Some boundaries have already been crossed.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And, you know, I got in an argument with somebody. I forgot who it was, but they were telling me. And, again, I don't want to get too gross, so we're not going to, you know, you can hit the mute button. So we're not going to go too crazy. But they tell me, well, why don't you do up to this base? And I'm like, because I know myself. I know that I'm a biological man. I know that I am in a spiritual war against, like, my flesh and God, etc. I know for a fact that once I get to that base, I'm just going to be like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to pray for forgiveness in an hour. And we're just going to go for it. And, you know, my mom, when I was a kid, she'd tell me, she's like, I tell her, well, why can't like me and my girlfriend like sleep in the same house? What if we're in different rooms and I lock the door or whatever? And I was like 12. Jose knows me and he's known me for a while. I tend to debate pretty much anything. Mm-hmm. So I was with my mom and she told me, she's like, no, you can't have a girl over or whatever. I was like, what if she's in another room and I lock the door? No. I'm like, why? She's like, Ethan, if I leave a chocolate bar and I tell you where it is, it's in the dining room on the table. And you're in your room, at a certain point in the middle of the night, you're going to be like, dang it, I'm getting the chocolate bar. And you're going to go over there and you're going to get it. And you're going to feel bad about it, but you're not going to care. Mm-hmm. And she's like, that's the same concept with girls, and that's all you need to know. Mm-hmm. Like when I was a kid, I'd ask her, well, where did I come from? You know, that kind of stuff before I had the talk. And she's like, you know, your dad and I wanted a kid, so we prayed for it, and here you are. And that was all the explanation that I got. Mm-hmm. And so that's where not only are you learning about boundaries about temptation, but you're learning about boundaries whenever you are a parent with your children. Mm-hmm. My mom she explained stuff to my sister that she didn't explain to me. Like the female body part that, anyway, she never told me what it was until I was one day in biology class and we learned about it. She never wanted me to know the word because she knew me as a kid what my self-control was. And she didn't want me running around saying it. I couldn't watch SpongeBob when I was a kid because it was too vulgar. She said that she'd put it on the TV and I'd immediately start talking like SpongeBob. Immediately. So that's where you, as a parent, we can have a podcast where we talk about like shows I wasn't allowed to watch because I wasn't allowed to watch anything. Golly. But so that's where we talk about boundaries. You as a parent, we keep going back to the getting ready. And so in a secular aspect, these boundaries are non-existent. What do you think?
Like you said, they are existent in some people that have.
You think they're existent, but those boundaries are placed beyond boundaries that should have been placed.
Right. right beyond boundaries that
Like if you put the stop sign out on the street on the other side,
right.
you
past
you're gonna run it and then you're gonna stop,
Yeah,
and it's too late.
you're not even gonna stop. You're already past where your stop should have been, and you're just like you said. You're not gonna care, and you're just gonna whatever. But like you said, some people do put boundaries on because they have, they feel some type of way. Maybe their spirit in themselves makes them feel like that's
Even if you're
wrong
not Christian, you still have a
or
spirit.
that's
You still have a
dirty.
conscience.
Right,
Your conscience is God talking to you.
and they don't feel
So
good
it-
about it.
Right. And even if you're not Christian, it's still there.
Mm-hmm.
You still have a soul. You still have.
But that's
Anyway.
the way sin. You could say sin, the devil, the world, whatever it is. That's how it just. It's like a slow dagger that just
The enemy.
Yes, exactly. The enemy is just slowly. He's got all the time in the world. He'll slowly work you till the boundaries are gone.
Right. And he knows you. He knows, you know what? Ethan's control level is really bad. If I hit him at this time of the day, right after he may have eaten dinner, he'll be in a better mood. That's where I'm going to go in. He may look at Jose, for example. I'm not saying that this is either of those, but whatever. Where Jose has a firm self-control. He knows this is going to have to be a gradual thing, but one day I'm going to get to him.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is where you have to learn. This is why you set boundaries. It's boundaries that the enemy's not going to pass.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you should pray about your boundaries because
Because-
then God will be like your security guard
Mhm.
outside of those gates.
Because you on your own, you won't be able to do it.
Like, for example, the gate of having sex is not until you get married. The key that opens that gate is once you have been married in front of God. Now you have the key, and you just have to open the gate. But you don't have the key beforehand. So God is standing in front of that gate, and he's not going to let you in without the key.
Right. And looking at it through.
But if you're not praying about it, the gate is just open.
Right. So if you don't care, then that's something that
It's just a matter of finding the road.
it just doesn't
Make a wrong
matter.
turn, you're going in.
You're there. You know what I mean? But with religion, with Christ, it changes the way, or it should change the way that you see a sexual interaction. Like you see it with your wife, only with your wife, and that's perfect. You're in the right place. But it's not. You've left the seeing it as a something fun, something that feels good, and you've turned to seeing it as something that you will enjoy with your spouse. You know what I mean? You've left this what the world shows you is good and what it is.
Right, you've entered the let's build the relationship.
You've
because
changed
this is
the
where
way
we
it
also
is.
have to compare love and lust.
Mm-hmm.
Love is good, lust is bad.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have love if you're not married. It doesn't matter how much you love the other person. If you're not married and you're engaged, you are in lust. It is that simple.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is where what you're saying has to be applied.
You gotta, not you, because like I said, you can't do it. You won't do it naturally. As much as you say I'm great, I can do it.
I hate to
myself.
interrupt you, but you keep saying naturally. Our next point is biology, so I guess we could throw that in there.
Yeah. Biologically,
How does biology work with these boundaries?
like you said, it's science. It's part of how we are to want to be with the other sex. At some point in a young man's life, he's gonna feel urges to be with the other sex, right? Then that's where, if you're not raised as you were, you're a grand example of how a Christian boy, man should be raised.
Crying nuts.
But if you weren't raised that way, then those feelings are gonna come, and you're gonna satisfy them.
Well, let's talk about biology real quick. For example, there's this thing called hormones and testosterone,
Mm-hmm.
and growing up
Mm-hmm.
between the realm of 14, 15 to about 20, you are a psycho. You have pimples. You're going crazy. You see a girl and you are locked on there, And it's just the reality. It doesn't mean that you're going to pursue it, but it's just, it is what it is. And so I mentioned earlier briefly your frontal cortex. Your brain's not even developed. For guys, it's till you're 25, I think. It's definitely 21, is probably 25. So really, the argument could be made, okay, well, then why are you getting married before you're 21, whatever, but that's where it depends on your individual conscience and your individual relationship with God. But we're talking about biology. You as a Christian have to recognize that I am a biological human. I, in my body, am going to have these desires. I need to pray for God to give me strength. And that if I have to exercise that God show me the correct outlet, whether it be marriage, whether it be prayer, whether it be whatever it may be. Another emotional commitment, a job or school or, church, whatever it may be, an instrument, something else to get your attention off of it. Because it's going to be there whether you like it or not. It's just a matter of what do you do about it. You know what I mean by that?
You can't do it alone. You just can't do it alone. You could come to church every Sunday, think yourself the strongest Christian out there, think yourself
cry during worship, hands up, whatever.
Exactly. And then you're by yourself, you're away from church, nobody's watching you, and you just don't care. You just give it up because you're not pulling strength from God, and you're not depending on God, and you're thinking to yourself that you can until you can't.
Exactly.
So why even go in that loop? I think this is what this conversation is about. We're telling you can't. We're telling you can't. And if this is you thinking that, if you've been that person thinking you can, and you couldn't,
let this be the revelation.
Yes, and God
Here,
has to help you.
Look into the camera and creep them out.
God has to help you, man. God has to. There is no way you can do it on your own. That's it.
Awesome. Well, the other thing, just a quick personal story. We were on a cruise to the Mediterranean, for my grandparents' 50th anniversary, me and all my cousins, my grandparents, all of us. And we were in the terminal. You know what? This wasn't, it doesn't matter where the cruise was. It was a cruise and it was a vacation. I'm pretty sure it was this past Christmas. We came back from the Mexico mission trip, and then we had planned a Caribbean cruise, and then we went on it. And we were down there waiting to be able to get on the boat. And I was with my uncle, I'm with my aunt, I'm with my cousins, I'm with my sister, my parents, whatever. We're actually waiting for my two older cousins, Hannah and Susanna, to come out of the check-in with my grandparents because they had taken another Uber, whatever. And, there's all the people that are about to get on the boat are all in one room waiting for the gate to open. And all of my, this clump of people comes through. And there's this little kid, and he was holding some kind of a game, or I forgot what exactly it was. He was holding a 12-pack of Coke. And we had gotten into an argument the night before about whether or not we could bring drinks on the boat. They're not going to let you do it. And then I saw this kid coming out of security with like a Diet Coke, like a 12-pack. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. So, of course, I'm staring at it with like focus in my eyes. And I'm like, you got to be joking. Right behind him was some girl who was probably my age, I guess. I don't really remember, but rather attractive. I'm looking at this kid, and I just didn't say anything. And I think my jaw was dropped. I mean, I was mad because we had gotten into this argument, and they were all, Ethan, you stop being so arrogant and ignorant, thinking you know everything, whatever. And then we get there, and you could have it. And I'm like, I told y'all. And then my uncle looks at me. And then my aunt's like, whoa. And I was like, what are y'all talking about? And then I noticed there was a girl, and I was like, no, it's not. And my uncle, like, put his arm on my shoulder, and he's like, Ethan, check your heart. I was like, what? I was like, what are you talking about? Check my heart. And my mom's like, I've never seen him lock eyes on a girl like that. I'm like, the kid had a 12-pack of soda. And they were like, well, why do you care about the 12-pack of soda? I'm like, because we had an argument about this the night before. And they're like, Ethan, check your heart. And then my uncle later, we get on the boat, we put everything in there. And we're just kind of walking around like, wow, this cruise is cool, whatever. And we get up to the pool. And, there's girls there that are, rather uncovered, about to swim or whatever. He's like, Ethan, And I'm just like, what? And we're just walking, and he's like, Ethan, like, did you check your heart? I'm like, I'm fine. And he's like, I hope you are. I was like, okay. Anyway, but that's where you get into biology and the natural inclination to lock eyes as something walks by. And then this is where you have to be careful with your image. People talk about like, oh, it doesn't matter what other people think of you. Well, it does, because you're reflecting the body of Christ. So this is where I'm not saying that I should have been like, wow, there's a girl there, let me not look at this thing. But I should have realized who's around me and what's the proper way to react, if that makes sense. So anyway, we're talking about biology, all that. I just wanted to say that.
Well, the Bible also says that even if you lust in your heart for what you see, it's still adultery.
Right. If you so much, I forget the exact verse, but when I saw this, I exploded. It says that if you look at a girl
With lust in your
with lust in your heart or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
you have already committed adultery, and you should, I forget the exact terminology, but basically cut out your eye that saw it.
Mm-hmm.
So if I see a girl, I should basically, I've already committed adultery, cut out my eye.
It says, if your eye causes you to sin, gouge it out.
Gouge it out. Gouge it out is the correct.
If your hand,
Those of you that are typing away the verse, we will check later.
if your hands make you sin, cut them off.
I mean, I guess, yeah, that'd be the same logic. That makes sense.
No, that's what it says.
Oh.
Yeah. And that's an
Awesome.
extreme.
I know it says the eye thing. I saw that, and I guess that was enough for me. I guess I didn't need to see the hands.
Yeah. And if God is deliberately putting it in the Bible, that's how serious He's taking it.
Right, and that's where you can't argue it.
And in ourselves, I feel like there's a lack of care to where if those let's say those things were laws, nobody would want to sin.
Sure.
Everybody would keep
But this
their
is,
eyes down.
you have the whole, Jesus died on the cross for you.
Grace. So us as Christians, we should look at it with that. That's extreme.
That like radicalism, I guess.
Yeah, because that's how much God
Well,
is.
and it's also
warning you.
not radical.
Mm-hmm.
You can say it's radical. It's just because you don't know your Bible.
Yeah.
So I think, there's other biology stuff that I wanted to talk about, but I kind of forgot. So you also have here who and no advice. I think that those could probably connect, but you're the one that wrote them down. So what do you mean by that?
Well, by who I was saying
Who? Jose says who just about every 2 seconds, if you know him outside of this. Just about every two. I'm like, hey, we're going in and out. Who? Like, you and me. When? Who? And then we get there, and I'm like, hey, they have a double-double. Who?
Yeah,
And I'm like, what the? And then I'm like, hey, we're in the airport, and I'm like, hey, you want to go to that customs line? Who? I'm like, bro, just go. Like, quit asking me all those questions. Anyways, but you were
tell me
saying?
someone said something. Like,
He probably just wrote it down to read him, and that way he can say it out loud. Just like I say for real every 2 seconds.
I wrote who to get us thinking about what do you want to see in.
So have
the
we
person
probably
that-
already covered that?
Yeah, and the other person.
Okay.
What can you see? What do you see in the future? How are they? Your family. I guess we did cover that.
All right.
Who it is.
The next one is no advice.
Well, I was just typing things real quick to kind of give us points, like I said. And no advice is maybe you don't want to hear us tell you our point of view. That's really what I thought. What if somebody scrolls past this and they see dating advice or whatever it is that we're gonna call this video, and they just don't care?
Well, what if God is talking to them through us?
Right.
What if this is all simulation, bro?
But what if you feel like, I don't need to hear about all this. I'll figure it out myself. That's a long road to take, honestly.
Yeah.
Because there's so much, not just in us. I'm not saying we're.
Well, what we've talked about, you have to be ready for.
Yeah. But there's so much information on the way things go, in relationships. My girlfriend is studying psychology, and so she fills me in on a lot of things that she reads about relationships getting cold at a certain age, and then they reignite when you have grandchildren, or you know, when the kids leave or when the kids come, you know, the relationship between two people gets cold because the focus is on the child now, you know, etc. I forgot what I was going with this.
So no advice, psychology, where the relationship's going.
Completely lost the train.
All right. Well, now you know Jose's girlfriend studies psychology.
Yeah.
And this is our first podcast. The idea is we're having a conversation. We record it. We post it. Y'all like it or you hate it. But a lot of the youth have asked us questions like these. And then, you know, somebody opens the door. Hey, guys, we're gonna take up the offering in the churches. For us, offering's at the end of the service. So we're like, okay, this is over.
I got you.
So then the youth go home confused. Okay, Jose's got it.
I found
Cool.
it. It came back to me.
Amen. The Lord re-put it in his head, and we will receive it.
Okay, well, with this person that doesn't want to hear, you're going to struggle a lot more if you don't look for advice. You know, there's wisdom in looking for lessons to be learned in people that have already failed, you know, that have already done it.
Well, that's you can learn from failures.
Right.
Like what we talked about earlier, like learning from like your
why mess
experiences
up?
as a relationship.
Why mess up if someone else already did?
Well, you're going to mess up.
Okay, but why not prepare yourself better?
Well, I'm not saying you shouldn't.
Okay.
Like what I was saying, like you take what you can from a relationship that just didn't work out, and you take those mistakes, and the idea is that you not make them again. And if you do, you now understand them with a deeper understanding in an ideal world.
With the point that I was trying to make with my girlfriend telling me all these things that they teach her is that if somebody were to look into those things, if a young man were to look into, he's not ready to want he's not ready to be part of a deeper relationship, part of a sexual relationship, if we were to look into those things and find wisdom, then we would put ourselves in a better place and have a better chance of not having to suffer through failures. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Short answer, yes.
So, with no advice, the person that I'm trying to target is, you don't know it all. And if you do feel like you know it all, I saw a quote that said, if you feel like you know it all, you haven't asked enough questions.
That's deep.
Yeah.
Probably going to make that my new Instagram bio.
So just listen to people. Just look at other opinions. Look at other sides. You know, don't think that you know. Don't think that you have it all figured out. At any age that you're in, you know, continue to
really any topic.
In any topic, in any
and
part of your life.
We're both approaching this from, like, in my perspective, a lot of people perceive me to be ignorant or, you know, arrogant or whatever, or I'm closed-minded, or I'm locked in my views. That's up for debate. But the point is that it might be something that I suffer from. So I'm approaching this, looking at the priority, as someone who might have just scrolled past dating advice. Like, no mensch on the dating advice. You got to be kidding, you know, whatever. And you're approaching this as, I remember one time you told me, oh my God, it's going to take me forever to remember. I had asked you, I don't know if you still do. I'm not going to, you know, commentate on it, but I remember like 2 or 3 years ago, you had this whole thing about how I do what I want. Be like, hey, we're gonna do this. I do what I want. I'm like, hey, are you sure like your parents are okay with that? I do what I want. And I'm like, you should be doing what God wants, but you know, and then I'd tell you that, well, that's not your place. And I'm like, okay. So, you know, you're approaching this from as someone who, I don't know if you still do, but, you know, very I do what I want mindset. And I'm approaching it as I don't want to hear what your opinion is because it's irrelevant compared to mine. And that's where we have to approach this information. And you know what? Put both of these things to the side. And this is something that I need to listen to.
Yeah. Well, the advice that I'm saying of finding wisdom and looking for wisdom and learning and listening, I was that kid that took the roundabout.
What do you mean by the roundabout?
I have taken the roundabout to not listening to people. And that's a perfect example. Not listening to Ethan because he was younger than me, or I didn't care, or I thought I knew it all. And I thought I had it all under control. I wouldn't listen to people. And because of that, I had to make mistakes. I had to figure it out myself. And then come around to find out that it's better to listen to other people. That's what I'm trying to get to. You don't have to go around in a circle and mess up and
So why not save yourself the error
exactly.
instead of making yourself commit the error to learn from it? Because that's a very worldly thought that a lot of Christians have, where you get onto them and they're like, well, I'm going to learn from it in the end, aren't I? Screw it.
Mm.
It's like, well, no. How about you learn about something else? You know?
Mm-hmm. Or
So-
why don't you listen because I'm warning you?
Right. You know, I'm trying to help you.
Yeah.
You don't know what perspective I may be approaching this from.
And some people may accept it. You know, some people may be in that place to where they can take it. Or some people can be in the place I was in and just be closed-minded.
I don't remember the context on that. I don't remember if it was something serious or I was like, hey,
No,
like,
yeah.
why can't we go get some
But
boba? I don't know.
I definitely remember that time.
So, okay, so you're not in that time anymore.
No, that's why I'm advising people to,
Okay.
to listen. To listen. Don't listen. and-
Because you took the roundabout is what you're
Right,
saying.
right.
Okay.
Don't listen and like take it as law from everybody. You know what I'm saying? But be wise. You know. Okay, this person did this. and
You don't
this-
have to be 100 to be wise.
Right. You could just common sense is a very great thing. Common sense will get
Street
you
smarts.
will get you out of like 50% of the problems that you could encounter. But the other 50 is experience, and experience can be learned from other people because they've done it and they've messed up, or it can be learned by yourself. You know what I'm saying? So listen to, even if they're younger than you, give it some thought. Give them a chance. If
Cool.
you don't vibe with it, look for another answer or whatever else it may be, you know. But listen to other points of views and don't close yourself off.
Sure. Well, your next one is pain or bad experience with a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Now, before we get started on this, at any point are we interested in getting a third person in on this, or we've been going for what, an hour? How long have we been going? An hour?
About an hour.
An hour? Should we get someone in on this, or should we get to our last few points? And what do you think?
Sure. The next point that we have is pain or bad experiences with relationships.
So Emmy or Denise, Emmy or Denise. For those of you that don't know, it's for a couple of kids running a couple of technology. They gave us the keys to the church, and here we are. Emmy or Denise, whoever wants to, if you'd like to comment on your pain or your bad experience with your relationship. You are both shaking your heads no, even though you have both told me on separate occasions before this that you'd like to comment. When I said that we were going to do a podcast, Madeline Holland said, oh my God, y'all should have me on it. Y'all should have me talk. And here's the opportunity. And she's cringing and she is face palming. So we will not. If they walk up and sit down, that's fine.
Mhm.
But don't give in to peer pressure. That's the lesson. I'm going to focus into the camera. Don't give in to peer pressure. Okay. So pain or bad experience with relationship. What do you mean by that? And let's get on it.
Well, with relationships, we are talking about dating, so boys and girls. But this could go for any relationship: father, son, father, daughter, moms. You know, any relationships that you may have, whether it be business and school, family. People come into the church with baggage, and sometimes that baggage is, most of the time in young kids, either their parents or their boyfriend or their girlfriend, right? And so with that baggage, with that pain or thorn that they have in them, they need something to either wipe that from them.
Wipe that from them.
Yes. Wipe that from them, or they need to talk it out, or they need somehow to figure out how to cope with that. Do you know what I'm
Okay.
saying?
Okay.
And so I'm not just talking about kids that come in with problems with girls, or girls that come in with problems with guys. I'm talking about It could be the whole church. Maybe the man comes in and he's depressed. A family
Sure.
man, right? So that kind of goes back to basing yourself in Christ, you
Okay.
know, and letting Christ be the one that moves you, letting Christ be the one that helps you forgive, forget, helps you move on, helps you talk to that person again, or find peace with things that have hurt you or have messed with you in the past.
Right, because pain can produce peace if you are careful
If
about
it's
it.
worked.
Well, I mean, yeah, but pain can produce peace. That's a little deeper though. But
Mhm.
so here with us we have Emmy/Madeline, depending on how she identifies today. Holland.
Emmy.
She identifies as Emmy today. They are equalizing her mic as she speaks. So why don't you tell us who you are, where you're from, do you identify as which gender, and how old are you?
Hello, my name's Emmy, and I am his sister. I'm a 16-year-old female, and
You identify as female?
yes,
Okay. Are you a she/her?
yes.
Okay.
Respect my
cool.
pronouns. Okay.
We will do. Okay, so we were talking about pain and bad experiences with relationships. You do not have to talk about relationships unless you want to. We're not gonna, neither of us in an ideal world know if you are into that or not. But looking at a relationship from a Christian perspective, what is tonight is also ladies' prayer, ladies and gentlemen. So we are. Anyways, what would you like to comment?
Okay. Pain in a
Pain or bad relationship, or oh my God, bad experience with a relationship.
it sounds very vague. Is there some
So
way you
basically,
can-
taking what Jose was saying.
Bad experience could be my dad offended me in any relationship. We're not talking about your boyfriend or your girlfriend.
Oh, okay. So we're not. This is now to any relationship.
Yeah, because like I was pointing out, people could come into the church, youth could come into the church with problems. Maybe they haven't even had a boyfriend or a girlfriend, but they have pain from a relationship that is rooted in them. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So,
So basically, with what he was saying, and also the fact that with those relationships, like with your parents or whatever, but depending on your perspective of those relationships, is how you're going to approach a boyfriend or girlfriend, because we are talking about dating at the end of the day.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about the main thing people really look for when they're trying to find a relationship, and I think that's commitment. And the best way to really kind of embody commitment is through marriage. Marriage is an extremely big commitment, and
Emmy's going into her junior year, so she's approaching this as a 16-year-old.
yeah, I think about it a lot because I was in a relationship for a year and a half, and
I didn't know.
And it was very rough. I learned a lot of lessons, and I think the main thing I think someone should look for when they're looking for a partner is someone they can see themselves being committed to. Someone that you connect with, someone that understands you, and a healthy person. And I think you shouldn't put love above everything. Someone I was talking to who has a really good relationship with his girlfriend told me that he doesn't think about religion, or he doesn't think about his future or job or how he's going to make money. He thinks about his connection with his girlfriend and how well they get along, how well they complete each other. And I'm just like, but in the long run, you got to think about these things. It's very relevant.
It is inevitable,
And
like Thanos.
if you don't think about your values and how those end up conquering your bond with each other, it can be pretty bad. You can't put love above everything else because, especially if you're in love, it's very hard to distinguish love and being in love.
Or lust or love.
Yeah.
Love or lust. If you know, you know.
Okay. And so you just got to think about very relevant topics like money and jobs. It doesn't have to just be religion, but religion is very important.
So you're bringing us this pain that you have overcome from a bad experience with a relationship, right? Jose, what do you take away from what she has said?
It's a really great point that you're bringing up with commitment. And going back to what Ethan was saying at the beginning, I think we should evaluate ourselves and see if we're ready for a commitment that long or that big, that will require us to look at our finances, will require us to look at how you and the other person, how close you are, will require you to basically become one and take on life, whatever it is that comes. You need money, you need a job, you need cars and a house and children and all that. So evaluate yourself, each person, the couple, each person has to evaluate themselves and see if the other person is ready to commit to those things and become one, That's the way I see it.
Yeah, you planted a really good thought in my mind. The guy I was just talking about who puts love above everything else, I don't think he really understands the full idea of what love really is. I think he just thinks it's looking into each other's eyes and just getting lost and your surroundings are just gone. I think love is willing to work for a stabilized relationship, being able to depend on each other, a very balanced relationship. That actually applies to a lot of things.
For sure.
Relationship really relies on dependence towards one another. And especially if you're like independent and your partner is depending on you, that won't last. I think that's kind of toxic.
We'll have a toxic.
Unless
I tried to pronounce this the other day, didn't I? Toxicity.
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 Mm-hmm.
We will have a toxicity podcast.
But unless you're like a parent and child, I mean, obviously, children depend on their parents quite a bit.
Well, it's interesting that you're bringing that up because our next point is fam. I'm assuming family. We've already lightly touched on family, but you were saying is going to connect into the family.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and talk about that.
Okay. What did you mean by family? If we've already touched a little bit on it, but what have we not touched on?
Family, dating advice. I'm talking to a boy. Okay, I'm gonna talk to myself in the past. You got to know where your parents stand on it. Know what's gonna happen if you bring that significant other around. If you tell your family about them, how they're gonna react, what the rules are, and all that, based on, like, for family's sake. I'm not going into the Bible. I'm not going into what you were raised to do, into respect. Like you said, going to talk to the dad. No, you gotta look. That's pretty much it. Look at how your family will take you going into a relationship.
What I look at it, the way that I look at it is, we'll get Emmy's on this too, but the way that I look at it is, you date to get married. What do you do when you're married? You start a foundation. And with that foundation, you start your family. So when I think about getting to know their family, what's my family going to be like when I get to that level? And these are things that you have to consider. Because even if your family consists of you and I, my hypothetical wife and myself, that is a family. Whether we're dating or not, that is a family. I don't know why I said that. We're going to be married. So, but that is a family. Whether you have kids or not is what I guess I meant. Or pets, whatever. It's you two. That's a family. So how do you develop the pillars of your family? And what are your home values, etc.? What is it that mom has on our kitchen that says like 2 teaspoons of love,
She
four
has this,
4 cups of hope, or whatever it is. I don't know.
It's basically a poster that says like 1 cup of love, like 2
It's the recipe
teaspoons
for
of-
our family.
Yeah, just very wholesome things, very peaceful things.
Do they get applied?
Um,
Well, wait, hang on. I shouldn't have. Okay. No relationship's going to be perfect. I can't believe we haven't talked about this, but no relationship's going to be perfect. Even if you are, the head pastors of whatever, your relationship's not going to be perfect. So with said recipe, just because you have the recipe doesn't mean like, okay, I have to do that. Like when you're making brownies and you put a little bit, like you put 3/4 cup of water instead of 1 cup, you're still going to get brownies, but are they where they need to be? You know what I mean?
they might be better.
They might be better. You may learn from your pain and your bad relationships. You may learn from the attachment disorder and all these things.
Yeah.
That's my take on it.
I mean, that brings up a good idea, 'cause fighting with anyone you have a strong relationship, if it's not over something really small or trivial, then it's a very healthy way to, especially in like the first years of marriage, when you're getting to know the person a lot more, and you're fighting like at its peak, it's a really healthy thing if you're fighting over I mean, whether it's small things.
It's actually unhealthy if you're not fighting.
Yeah. If you're just like, letting the other person walk all over you, or
'Cause through those fights,
yeah, a lot of stuff happens. So
there are boundaries made, is what Jose said without saying it into his mic.
There are boundaries made, and there is respect built for one another.
That's strong.
If somebody if one of the people in the relationship is talking down on the other, there's no respect there. Do you know what I'm saying? I think the mic may be a little too loud.
We're having some light feedback.
There's no respect there, and so the person being talked down to has to have the self-respect to say something. Do you know what I'm saying?
Sure, because if neither of you have self-respect, you won't have respect for each other.
And so, going back to that little scenario, there has to be a give and take on, I don't like that you did this, I don't like how you talked. And then the other person has to say, okay, I understand, and this is how we will better.
I have this bad experience, and I can't, for example, not to get super uber personal, like I said, my biological grandma I never met because she killed herself. We can't make suicide jokes in our house because they hit a string with my mom. I'll say like, oh my God, I'm going to kill myself. And my mom's like, don't talk like that, because it really does affect her because of her bad experience. And so that's where in a relationship you have to acknowledge where they're coming from. You have to be considerate and acknowledge where they are coming from. So.
Yeah. That goes with understanding your partner or who you have the relationship with.
When Emmy says partner, she does not mean mate.
It can apply to that. It can. That's why I specified, the person you have a relationship with.
Okay.
So, yeah, being understanding and fighting really helps you get to know the person, and it can either grow your respect for them or completely like destroy all the respect you've grown for them in the past.
So through these pillars of respect and, the stuff that we've talked about, experiences and stuff, that is how you get the foundation for a family. I think that's the way to simplify it, unless y'all have another thing to add before we get on to prayer.
Yeah. Basically, for family, you and your significant other, once married, will be a family, like Ethan said. Your foundation has to be Christ. Each person's foundation individually has to be Christ. And according to what Christ says, according to what the Bible says, that's what your family should consist of. Does that make sense? What
Yeah.
What does Christ or the Bible say about how arguments should be taken out?
Okay.
What does it say about how home etiquette should be? What does it say about the man of the family providing for the home? What does it say about the woman being the man's help? You know, equal, just as important, but
The nurturer?
yeah, having the man and the woman having different responsibilities, right? So coming back around, not just our points of view, but coming back around to Christianity, to the Bible, your family and your view of how you want your family to be must be based on the Bible.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, taking these points of time, age, attachment, boundaries, biology, who, no advice, pain or bad experiences that you may have had, family. All of these points, what is necessary for them is prayer. Without prayer, you will fail on all of the points, and it is that simple. Would either of you like to explain to us the significance of prayer?
Prayer is very important because, I mean, and it's not like you're pressured to do it at all. You can do it any time of the day for any reason, whether it's big or small. And I think it's therapeutic. I think it's a necessary thing to. It's nice to have someone to depend on. I think we can all agree with that. Sure, you could be independent, you can be like on your own, but depending on people is a really nice thing. And when you pray, the thought of prayer reminds you that, God always has your back. And whenever I'm like worried about something that I can't really do anything about, I pray. I pray a lot. Yeah. Dependence.
Well, in prayer, according to, based on dating advice, say, I'm going to make a little scenario for you. Say that there is somebody that you're interested in. And with Ethan's strict and cutthroat requirements for this person, they've met all these requirements. Okay.
Yeah.
They've met all these requirements.
They've met all these requirements. And you're moving on to, you're continuing to date this person. You can see yourself marrying this person. This hits the next point. Can you marry this person?
That's what I meant by the question. At the very end, we'll end with that question.
Okay. Well, we're getting there. You can see yourself marrying this person, and it's going great. And throughout this time, you've been praying. Okay? God's answers will either be yes.
Praying about the relationship.
Yes, we'll be praying to make sure that this is what God wills for your life, okay? God's answers will either be yes, no, or wait. If it's a no, it's done. No.
Sure.
If it's wait, then it'll come in time.
Okay.
Yes, now, right?
Okay.
So let's say in your prayer, God doesn't give you a straight answer. What then? Okay, you don't have to answer. But
Just food
if
for thought.
God isn't telling you yes, marry this person, yes, marry this person, what can you base it off of?
Nothing.
No, that's incorrect. The Lord has given you a roadmap, has given you a foundation. You have a solid foundation, correct?
I'd like to say so.
Okay, not you, but a man in your position, raised
I
in
see.
your way.
I see. Yes.
The Bible is our foundation, right? Christ
Yes.
is our foundation. So, you know right from wrong.
Okay.
The Bible has explained what right from wrong
Human
is.
nature.
And human nature comes against that at times.
It distinguishes what's right or wrong.
Okay?
Okay.
So, we could say that you knowing right from wrong, you knowing what it is that God wants for your life, knowing what it is that you want for your life, knowing what is good and bad for your life, it's a choice. It's a choice. Because God never made anybody marry. In the Bible, it says that if a young man feels like he can, it's not good for a young man to be alone, right? So if you feel that that need or that want, that desire to have a significant other, marry, right? And if you don't marry, right? But God never forces us to marry. Okay? So you have to look at yourself. Are you ready? Summing all these things up, look at yourself. Are you ready? Is the other person ready? Yes. Okay, what do I know about the Bible and how I should behave, how I should direct this family that I'm about to create by marrying, right? All these things have to be in us before we make the decision. Because Christ and God may not give you a yes, may not speak to you and say, yes, marry this person.
Well, and it may be because God doesn't feel that you're ready for the answer.
It could be, right? Or maybe he's not answering you because it's not
Maybe you're strong in the boundaries and the biology, but you're weak in the bad experiences and the attachment.
Mm-hmm.
But God knows that you have the potential, so he's not going to tell you no,
Mm-hmm.
but you're not ready for that yes.
Mm-hmm. So you have to look at all that you have, all that you know, and be wise in your choice in that person and in how you lead a life with them. Yeah. So of course, it's important to give it to God. Give it to God. Ask God. Trust God and trust that God knows what he's doing. But you also have to do some work. You have to, if this person is not coming to church, cursing, like you said, being a bad influence, then you're not using wisdom. You're not using the tools that God has given you to choose someone correctly. You're ignoring them. And then you're using God not answering you as an excuse to continue to marry this person. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So prayer is very important, but it also requires some of us. It requires us to do some work, not
Right.
just, God, is it good?
Well, because prayer isn't just, you pray and that's it.
Yeah.
You pray and then you wait for the response. The response could be in a second. It could be in like 20 years. So you pray, you wait for the response, and depending on that response, you pray again.
Yeah, it could be through people or relevant things in your life. He'll definitely, if you beg for signs, he'll throw a sign at you. Or he won't, but most of the time he will. It's just his will. He knows what's going to happen in your life before you even realize it. He knows where you're going to end up. And he knows whether you're going to pray or not. He knows whether or not what he's going to do about your prayer. So, you can either be terrified by that thought or you could just be comforted by it. I think it's really interesting that I have my life already worked out for me. But it is kind of anxiety inducing when I realize that he knows where I'm going to end up. Isn't that
Anxiety inducing, folks.
Yeah. So that was completely like a complete topic change. I'm sorry.
No, it still connects though.
Yeah.
So basically, unless y'all have some more points, I'm going to kind of wrap it up. Y'all are both good. So looking at time, how old are you? Age, how old are you? Attachment. Don't give the wrong parts of yourself to the wrong person. Boundaries. Hold yourself back to where you're supposed to be. And don't open that gate. Don't jump the gate. Wait until you have the key.
Don't jump the gun.
Right, don't jump the gun. But don't hop the fence until you have the key to open the gate.
But don't
You have to, like what I was saying.
door.
All right. Like, okay, that's enough. Like I was saying, though, unless you have the key, don't open that gate. Don't void the gate. Wait till you have the key and open it, and then go. Biology. Know that you are in a battle between your flesh and the Holy Spirit. Who? No advice. Who? No advice. Who let the dogs out? Pain or bad experiences with relationships, you have to acknowledge where you're coming from. Family. You have to think about the pillars that you intend to set up for the rest of your life. With all of those points, you have to pray. You have to pray that God give you the answer to each one of those points. You don't know the answers to those points. God may want you to get married at 15. God may want you to get married at like 100. It doesn't matter. You have to pray to know. You have to pray to know how much attachment to give. You have to pray to know your boundaries and all the other things. So taking into all these accounts, having prayed for it, after you have done all of that, you then get to ask yourself, can you marry this person? And
that's all it really sums up to.
right, can you marry this person? And if the answer is no, then you do not ask them to be your girlfriend or boyfriend, because the answer is no. Because the end game of dating is to get married.
Maybe the reason the divorce rate is so high is because people don't take into account all of these things.
They're not ready.
Right. They're not ready. God has
They
not
think they
given
are, they
God has
think
not
they've
given them
met
the answer.
correct person.
God has not given them the answer, and they think that he has, because they are getting confused with, that's a whole other podcast. So anyway, well, thank you for listening. I am astonished that this has been an hour and a half. I was thinking, man, if we scrape 20 minutes, bro. So if you've listened to us this far, thank you so much. I hope that we were of blessing to y'all. If you have questions or podcast ideas, please contact us. Services are Sundays at 10:30 in the morning and Thursdays at 7:30 p.m. Let's thank Denise, our producer, and Emmy, our other producer. We have two producers. Anyway, well, that pretty much wraps it up. Can you marry this person? Good night, folks. Is the outro on it?
Press it low.
The outro. Nah, it's fine. We don't need the outro.
Press it low.
Are you done recording? Okay, that's fine.
Amen.
Just leave it going.
Press it low.
Use experience. Use wisdom.